government's most powerful tool is policy making. All I needed to do, it doesn't cost money, it's just brain power, was to put together an automobile vehicle assembly policy. That was all. I didn't need to borrow to bring resources into the country, just policy. And because of the quality of the policy, within a matter of 1.5 years, we have 5 out of the 6 global auto companies all assembling vehicles in Ghana. I'm going to prepare the budget for 2025 before the elections. Because remember, with our current situation, we have literally exited ourselves out of the international capital markets. With the type of domestic debt exchange program that we executed, we have also exited ourselves from the domestic market. So the only window available for us is private, domestic, and foreign capital. And that is why we have to build a strong partnership with the private sector.
I was working somewhere and then people were engaged in the program and they were talking on politics. And then they mentioned Honorable's name. And then because I know him personally, I stood and I was listening. And they said, Honorable is too gentle to be a politician. It's too gentle to be a politician. Because all those people in politics are dirty people. And I said, no. Then I said, the right people to be in politics are the people who are needy. Because if you give us bad policy, we'll have a bad economy. And we thank God we have such a person like this.
The Minister of Finance has no right to be taking credit for the marginal improvements that we are seeing in the economy. Because it is clear that it was against Ghana going to the IMF. And I can say with pride that I was one of the few senior leaders in government that made a decision that we had gotten to a point where we had no choice. That's what leadership is about. After the unsuccessful attempt by the first flag bearer of the party, Professor Albert Edubuahin, to win the general elections, the membership of the Young Executive Forum nominated me to contest the 1996 presidential primaries alongside leading personalities such as Professor Edubuahin, Mr. J. Kufuor, Dr. Jani Selby, Dr. Kwame Safodu, Mr. J.H. Mensah, and Dr. Jones Oforiatta. I was prevailed at that time upon by some senior members of the party, in particular, Mr. Akenten Apiamenka and Mr. Stephen Kreku, both of blessed memory, to sacrifice the opportunity to contest for the leadership of the party and rather support my senior colleague aspirants. From 1996 to 2000, I played a leading role in supporting the bid of the then candidate J.A. Kufuor to win the general elections and become President of the Republic of Ghana in 2001. After refusing appointment as a cabinet minister in the aftermath of the elections, the president then persuaded me to become NPP's first ambassador to the United States of America, a position I served with distinction. I was subsequently appointed in 2003 as Minister for Trade and Industry and Presidential Special Initiatives to implement a new paradigm of economic development, which I had introduced in 2001 on the assumption of office by President Kufuor. Between 2003 and 2007, I led the government's program for enhancing private sector development and ushering a golden age of business in Ghana. In 2007, I joined a distinguished group of 17 presidential aspirants to contest in the presidential primaries of the NPP. In that election, under very strange circumstances, the electoral process was truncated on the day of the election on account of accusations leveled against me of influencing the course of the elections. This strategy was designed to create disfavor against me in an attempt to diminish my popularity and the massive support I enjoyed amongst the rank and file of the grassroots of the party. In spite of this unfortunate occurrence, however, when the votes were finally counted, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo came first and I was the runner-up. According to the rules of the electoral process at that time, the two of us were programmed for a second-round ballot. It was in response to this development that I made my landmark declaration that to avoid a further deterioration of peace in an already divided party, I would make the supreme political sacrifice not to contest the runoff, but rather support my senior brother, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, to contest as the flag bearer for NPP. To contest as the flag bearer for NPP in the 2008 general elections. Despite the sacrifice I made to unite the party, as referred to above, there were very serious post-primary attacks on my supporters all over the country and an open show of hostility. Some of my supporters were victims of brutalities and continue to bear the scars of that treatment. I made several representations to the then leadership of the party, drawing their attention to the rancorous and divisive behavior of some elements in the party. Regrettably, however, my representations went unheeded. As a consequence, I gave notice of my decision to resign from the party in protest against the blatant alienation of my supporters, orchestrated by elements aligned to the leadership of the party at that time. The protests and reactions from the rank and file of the party at that time from all over the country compelled the then chairman of the party to constitute a reconciliation committee chaired by the then immediate past chairman of the party, Ambassador Samuel Odoi Sykes. The committee upheld all my submissions and prevailed upon me to rescind my decision to resign, which I did, with a firm promise to address all the contentious issues I had raised in my notice of resignation. And because government's most powerful tool is policy making, all I needed to do, it doesn't cost money, it's just brain power, was to put together an auto mobile vehicle assembly policy. That was all. I didn't need to borrow to bring resources into the country, just policy. And because of the quality of the policy, within a matter of 1.5 years, we have 5 out of the 6 global auto companies all assembling vehicles in Ghana. I'm going to prepare the budget for 2025 before the elections. Because remember, with our current situation, we have literally exited ourselves out of the international capital markets. With the type of domestic debt exchange program that we executed, we have also exited ourselves from the domestic market. So the only window available for us is private, domestic, and foreign capital. And that is why we have to build a strong partnership with the private sector.
I was working somewhere and then people were engaged in the program and they were talking on politics. And then they mentioned Honorable's name. And then because I know him personally, I stood and I was listening. And they said, Honorable is too gentle to be a politician. It's too gentle to be a politician. Because all those people in politics are dirty people. And I said, no. Then I said, the right people to be in politics are the people who are neat. Because if you give us bad policy, we'll have a bad economy. And we thank God we have such a person like this.
The Minister of Finance has no right to be taking credit for the marginal improvements that we are seeing in the economy.
Welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform, and here on Newsfile we put Ghana first. So as you know, he resigned from the NPP in January, on the 5th of January 2023 as trade minister, not as a member of the party. And then he left the party on the 25th of September and declared his intention to run for presidency as independent candidate on the vehicle Movement for Change. The movement has mobilized shocking crowds of officers and members across the country. Will that turn into real votes for him? That's what we live to see. He's now mobilizing bipartisan expertise for a national development plan to move Ghana from poverty to prosperity. A transformation he firmly believes is not possible under the NPP, and I guess not under the NDC either. Good morning and welcome to Newsfile.
Thank you, Samson.
So far,
you look good in your
Thank you, sir.
way.
Thank you, sir. And you're looking very good too, sir.
Thank you.
And for our radio listeners, my guest is the Honorable Alan Kojo Kyerematen, presidential candidate and former Minister for Trade and Industry. So, yesterday there was a national economic summit. We're interested. Tell us about this summit.
Thank you very much, Samson. It is obvious, at least to me, but hopefully a lot more Ghanaians, that what this country has been yearning for is a decent conversation on how to fix our economy. We have many challenges, there's no doubt about that. But I think there's consensus in this country that the most difficult challenge confronting us as a nation is our economy in crisis. Now, regrettably, the government has failed to respond to this desire of Ghanaians to bring all of us together to think about how we move this country forward. Look, I'm a politician, and I'm fighting for power. But it is true that I'm also fighting for a cause. And that cause is to bring economic prosperity to our country.
You have said that so many times.
And it therefore makes sense that I make a contribution in trying to mobilize the collective talents of this country, start thinking about how we fix our economy. I don't need to wait for the government to do it. It would have been useful if the government had taken that lead.
Right. But we know...
And that's the gap that I sought to fill.
Right. And you are absolutely right that Ghanaians are looking for a conversation about bread and butter, how their livelihoods can be improved. And many say this is why Dr. Bawumia caught on so well and assisted the NPP to win power, because he did the economic conversation. Is this not yet another of the usual talk shops? And in your case, a vehicle for votes?
First, there's a tendency in this country that people feel when they listen to politicians that they come to a conclusion that, oh, we've heard this before. Yes, you may have had the opportunity of listening to other politicians basically say the same thing. But the important thing to consider is who is the messenger. It's not about the message. It's about who is the messenger. Who are you listening to? That's what is important. I cannot hold brief for what other politicians have said in the past. I want people to listen to me and understand what I'm saying on the basis of my own record and my credibility. So it cannot be just another talk shop.
Right.
I have a very distinguished career, both locally and internationally, in various fields. In public service, in politics, in enterprise development, in the private sector, and in law. And so it is on the basis of my professional record that I make those representations about what I can do for this country.
So you have decided to bring your movement of change, brought these experts from various, fields, academia and the rest of them, to come and talk solutions for our economy. Yes, we know your background. We know how you transited from the UN, how you took on Empretec. We know about the things you had to do, PSIs, and then now...
The FCFTA.
Yes, of course, bringing us the headquarters of the AFC.
It's not just about bringing the headquarters, but about crafting and being the chief architect.
And in fact, before that, my reading tells me that you initiated a process that led to what is known as the World Economic Forum now.
Yes.
All of that apart, you are the man seeking the mandate to be able to transform the economy. These aspects you brought, they are not in the same ship with you. So they will not be there for the implementation. No guarantees.
Let me speak to that. What culminated in the summit was many months of consultation and discussions amongst different groups of experts. And I've made it known that the difference and the value that I bring to to our politics is the promise of a great transformation. And so many months ago, I put forward to the country a great transformational plan.
That's right.
Now, so this great transformational plan, the GTP, was the working document that was the subject matter for the discussion at the summit. So it was not just a question of people coming together and generating ideas without coordination. There was a blueprint, which is a great transformational plan, which was the subject matter for interrogation by different stakeholder groups. And I've led that process of putting together this great transformational plan, but also by bringing in people from different fields, apolitical, with expertise in helping us provide the content for the GTP. So that was the basis for the discussion.
Yes, and my questioning remains that these persons who helped in generating whatever ideas it is and brainstorming the solutions for our economic recovery and future are not in the same ship with you.
Yeah, but not in the same
political ship with you.
Yeah, but Samson, let me then put this into the appropriate context. I've done this all within the context of the movement for change. And the movement has been put together, driven by 5 pillars. One of them is not just to bring together people into an inclusive government, but also to make sure that those people in government will be responsible for the execution. And so I've been preaching about a union government, about a government of national unity. So if before getting into power, I bring people together, not just to put the ideas together, but I submit same to broad stakeholder consultation, then it is just logical that if and when I'm voted into office, that those people that I've been working with, not just the experts, but the broad masses of those who have inputted into the great transformational plan would also be part of the execution.
Okay.
Yes, so this is not just...
Someone wrote that ideas without execution is mere delusion.
Yeah.
And you have been associated also with the NDPC.
NDPC?
40-year plan. As in, whilst you worked in government in trade ministry.
Yes.
40-year plan. We know the problem is execution and not exactly the plans, correct?
Yes and no. You have to first audit the plan. The plan provides the basis for execution. So it's not just a question of having a plan. The plan itself must lend, or the plan must lend itself to effective and efficient execution. And my own sense of what we've done in the past is to provide a framework for long-term development plans. That's the framework. Now you need to drill down from the framework into a more operational document, which then becomes the basis for actionable activity. So the framework is important, but you have to distill from that framework an operational plan. And the operational plan is what then you execute. So basically what I'm providing is that operational plan that will lead to efficient and effective execution.
Let me get people to appreciate why, for example, you say we need a plan, and many agree with you on that.
Yes.
That the last government, as in the NDC regime, decided that we needed affordable housing. And it doesn't look like there was a plan. They just looked for a place and went and began building towards 5,000 houses and spent $197 million US dollars, completing about 1,502 units. The NPP comes into office. We are aware of affordable housing projects that are being done. Whilst those projects, that project is getting rotten. Thieves are breaking in, destroying. And the government says we need 32 million cedis to be able to complete that. People say that does not make sense. That is waste of the country's resources. And this is not just the first time. You had Kufuor's affordable housing. The NDC came, abandoned, and began their own STS. We ended up wrong places, all of that. That is what a plan solves. But is it not really about being committed to executing our resources usefully?
First, very respectfully, I'm not here to discuss what different governments have done and evaluate how they did it. I am putting forward a certain framework for getting this country out of the economic ditch that we find ourselves. So I want us to focus on that. But be that as it may, let me contribute some perspective to this issue. The reason why you need a new political framework that goes beyond political parties, particularly our duopoly, is exactly what you are talking about. I've been preaching the fact that we must move beyond the duopoly. The reason why we must do that is, number one, the divisiveness that is occasioned by the duopoly is not sustainable. It does not help our country. But number two, and equally importantly, is the fact that when you have a duopoly, it does a number of things. One, there is no continuity in terms of not just governance, but also the kind of projects and programs that are initiated by successive governments. And this is exactly what you are talking about. There's also a winner-takes-all mentality, which then obscures us from the opportunity to use talents that are available. So if, for example, there was this understanding that we are working towards one common objective, and so there has to be continuity.
So that if there was a plan, for example, that we need the housing deficit is this much. So each government comes and contributes a certain
Absolutely.
quota.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. You know, so then we agree in an operational plan,
right,
that there are so many people in Ghana, so many categories who require different types of housing. And this is basically how we should go about delivering houses. And then a government comes in, they start, and then if another party comes in, then they continue. So basically, that speaks to the validity of the concept of this non-partisan approach to politics.
Right. And just before you came in, I played this clip of Dr. Nyawanyahu Tamaklo asking a question of Kwame Pianing at the UPSA annual leadership lectures. And he asked the question about China, the Singapores of this world, and how it is deliberate planning that has led them to the successes and the economic, liberation that they find themselves today.
Yes.
And ask Kwame Pianing that, what's the problem with us? We have had an attempt to have such plans through the NDPC once again. But the politicians have jettisoned it. What is it that you are going to do to ensure that this will be different?
The NDPC does not lead this country. The NDPC does not go to general elections to seek for, the mandate to rule. So the difference between what is happening and what I've been talking about is the fact that you need a leader who has one vision, who has competence, who has the integrity, the selflessness, and the execution capability. So once you have a leader that provides those characteristics, then that will define what the NDPC does. I'm not in any way, please don't get me wrong, devaluing the importance of the NDPC as an institution. But I'm talking about the fact that it is a question of leadership. The NDPC must draw their strength from the direction that is provided from. So if, for example, I'm talking as a leader, which I want to make clear to the people of this Ghana, that the value that I bring to this conversation is about transformation, about economic prosperity. That is what I am talking about. And once I set that direction, then the content of whatever NDPC does, and even the selection of people who go to constitute the membership of the NDPC will then be properly directed. You don't need an NDPC that is just a consolidation or representation of various institutions. It doesn't work that way. So, for example, if you go to more matured economies, when they talk about an economic management team, it's not just bringing ministers who are in your government to sit there and just swallow whatever the party believes in, or the government believes. You bring people who have the capacity to add value to policy. And remember, I think, you see, the main weapon that every government has is the power to make policy. That is the most powerful weapon. And it doesn't cost anything to make policy. But the quality of your outcomes as a politician is based on your capacity to be able to shape and drive policy.
Right. So this summit feeds, as you say, very well into your great transformation plan.
Yes, very much so.
Is it to say that you are still in the consultative process, or as we speak, we have a certain clarity about what the plan is that will deliver us from this kind of IMF poverty?
Yes, I like that. Now, there's clarity about what the plan is speaking to, because it's documented. And I'm not one of the politicians that will say, oh, but if you bring it out and people know about what you want to do, then either people will steal your ideas.
Or their manifestos.
I'm not interested in that.
Okay.
I know with the help of God, I'll become president. And so I want to prepare what will make it possible for me to make a difference before I get to power. Not to wait until they give you the mandate and you are now coming to put together a team to decide what you want to do. That alone takes 1.5 years.
If you wanted to share with us one of the diagnoses and the, as it were, the prescription for our economic, situation, what will it be in that plan?
I would say, let's say, currency. The stability of our currency. I mean, look, I have 150 policy prescriptions in the whole GDP, which are categorized under 6 thematic areas. But the focus on this one was just the economic cluster. Now, but when you are looking at economic revitalization, the stability of your currency is very important because it has implications for inflation in particular. It has implications for even the level of growth that you can achieve as a country and the multiplier effect. So I believe that if we just took the issue of currency, the strength of your currency is a factor, or it's a question of the demand and supply of foreign exchange. And the more foreign exchange you have, the more stable your currency will be as against other currencies, particularly, let's say, the dollar. Now, in this particular case, if we are able to increase exports, it means the supply of foreign exchange would increase. At the same time, if you are able to reduce the level of imports, then we would also conserve foreign exchange. So if you have more foreign exchange, then that strengthens your local currency, because you need less local currency now to exchange for 1 unit of dollar. That is the fundamental issue or challenge for currency stabilization. We need to be able to export more, and we have to reduce our imports. But to be able to do that, you have to produce. And you have to produce competitively. That's the whole thing about being able to industrialize.
Right.
So the basis of industrial transformation is for you to be able to produce, export, reduce your imports, and then that strengthens your currency.
The way to easily get people to buy into this and have faith that Alan Kyerematen will be able to deliver this to Ghanaians, and he's the option in these elections, is trust, track record. They say, by their fruits, you will know them.
Yes. Ye shall be known.
Yes. After your work with the UN, with Empretec, then you did 2001 to 2003, thereabout, you did ambassador to the US. Then from then, you became trade minister and PSI, Presidential Special Initiative, throughout. Then in Akufo-Addo's regime, you have held on to this position until you resigned. That's a cumulative of about some 14 years in that kind of work. What do we have to show for as the platform to trust that Alan will do as he says?
Samson, I thought you were moving on to a very interesting analysis, but then you seem to have just restricted that to the political space. If you're looking for a leader, go beyond and look at where he started from. That is what is important. There are many people in key government positions who have no business being where they are. If you look at their past record, what have you done? Where did you come from? How did you get there? Now, so I want us to go beyond that. Where did he start from? I mean, basically, I started my career in the private sector. I was one of the youngest managers ever recruited in Unilever. In the older days, it was called UAC. At the age of 22 years, I was a manager in the Unilever. And my record in Unilever is there.
That has been a successful brand.
Everybody who knows about the history of UAC in Ghana will know about me. So I have a firm, solid record of success in the private sector. I did not just spring up, as a politician. But then, interestingly, I left Unilever only for one thing, because at that time, I also wanted experience in the public sector. And I became a principal consultant in what used to be the leading organization for restructuring government enterprises, which was called the MDPI. And that also provided me with the expertise and the experience and the exposure about how to fix the public sector. So I came from the private sector, high level of executive performance, moved into the leadership of public service management and consulting. I mean, many people don't know that I led the team in the 80s to reorganize the whole civil aviation sector. That was when we decided to break the civil aviation into two: airport company and then civil aviation authority. So you cannot just come around and speak your way through to become president. What did you do in the past?
Yes.
Do you have a record of public sector, performance? So that actually then took me to a point where, in spite of the fact that I had been successful in the private sector in public, the UN convinced me then to start a program to develop small and medium enterprises in Ghana. So that's how I created and founded the MPTEC program. And I can tell you, 60 to 70% of the high-performing local companies in Ghana all came through the MPTEC program. I don't want to mention it on here. So I have paid my dues. And because of my success with building companies, building enterprises, the UN again appointed me as the regional boss for enterprise development in the whole of Africa. So, and I was able to bring this experience to over 13 other African countries. The same building companies, building entrepreneurs.
Yes, but can you say the same of the over a decade in public service?
But absolutely. But I'm saying that, you see, it is wrong for you to start from there. Start from where...
Yes.
Yes.
Because, so grant you that, after you have taken us to that background.
Then from there into politics. If you look at my record as ambassador in the United States, it speaks for itself. I'm not here to talk about that record, but if you try to find out, it speaks for itself. But beyond that, you remember that even before I went to the United States as ambassador, I initiated the Presidential Special Initiatives. Because I advised the president at that time, President Kufuor, that let us identify only 4 strategic sectors to diversify our economy away from cocoa. I have picked garments and textiles, industrial salt, cassava starch, industrial starch, and then oil palm. Just 4. That's exactly what my advice is. If you don't do anything at all during your presidency and you just focus on these 4 sectors, you move Ghana forward.
That can move Ghana forward, can transform our economy.
Absolutely.
But it hasn't.
Then oil palm. But basically, you don't have the record because I cannot speak for what happened after that. But at least within a matter of 3 years, we were able to cultivate 100,000 acres of oil palm, as against only 20,000 since independence. Before I introduced the PSI on oil palm, since independence, it was only about 20,000 acres of oil palm that had been. And that was actually just between the big multinational companies. Nor Palm, Chief Oil Palm, I'm now talking about localizing the oil palm industry. 100,000 acres, 4 million nurseries, So people who know and have understood the value that I brought into this country for them.
In the area of government, we are aware of what through AGOA.
Yes,
and
it was all the PSI.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're able to get for this country is progress.
Yes. Yeah.
But when you talk about this oil and everything else, and somebody walks into, the shelves today to want to buy oil, and everything they see is imported, it doesn't speak well of what was meant to be the game changer.
Yes. You've read it 100% right. But don't put that blame on me. I have nothing to do with that. I've told you what I did. If there was continuity of government, just listen to what I'm saying. I provide direction and execution, not just talking. And so we start a new initiative to transform our oil palm industry. Look, Malaysia earns $20 billion every year. $20 billion from oil palm alone. So we are not just talking, 20 pounds. So even if we were able to do half of that, that is 5 times how much we earn from cocoa.
So this is something you are still committed to?
Very much so. And it's part of the new strategic anchor industry that I'm promoting. But to the point that, so then what happened? If you are seeing imported cooking oil on our shelves, and you know the story, what I'm telling you now, but that's the more reason why I should become president. Because even at that time, even without being president, I provided that direction. If there was continuity, as I'm saying, that you see, you don't need to elect a president on the basis of political color. Right. It doesn't make sense. Is it because you are MPP or your NDC, it makes you the right person?
But say your 1D, 1F platform was to continue from the PSIs.
Absolutely. Not just to continue, but to expand it in different ways and to localize it further.
And because this was
decentralizing.
And you can say today that you are proud about that project.
It is the most revolutionary and the most innovative and the most comprehensive program of industrial transformation, not only in Ghana, but in Africa. You see, when I travel around, I used to travel around with President Akufo-Addo. In countries that understand what development is, the first thing they tell President Akufo-Addo is that you have a great project in that one district, one fact. Everywhere we've been to. So we are not celebrated in our own country. But I'm very happy that you've been able to
the results should be so abundant for Ghanaians to see, and without anyone telling them that this is the product of 1D, 1F. But as we speak, as the last time we checked, we don't even import, we don't even produce 2% of the poultry we consume, and that takes us millions of Ghana cedis, of dollars all the time.
But that is also because the media, regrettably sometimes, and I'm choosing my words very carefully, I said sometimes, are very negative in their reportage. I mean, if you have a Joy News report on 1D, 1F, which is so biased, they go around shooting, images of 1D, 1F companies. They don't provide enough content for people to evaluate what they are showing to the people, and it's all negative commentary about 1D, 1F.
Negative commentary cannot.
Who does it help?
Negative commentary cannot replace and overcome the reality.
Yeah.
The reality must be so unavoidable that no one can use their negative, false commentary.
Yeah. But something, let me ask you.
To stop what is real.
Does it help for that negative commentary? If
the companies are collapsing,
yes,
the story has to be told.
But it has to be told in a transparent, in a balanced and fair manner. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
And please don't argue about
That's
it.
fair.
Because
That's fair
please, you see, the 4 pillars of journalism is to do what? Is to inform, educate, entertain. So what we are talking about is that if it is about having a balanced, fair analysis, then you not just show that. But anyway, I think you're making a very important point.
Right.
I think there is no doubt, or you are not disputing the value of the 1 District, 1 Factory program.
Absolutely not.
Now, if you are now trying to audit the challenges and how we can make it better, that's another conversation.
All right. All right.
And the government knows that because we have not prioritized industrial development, the amount of resources that is required to make 1D1F even more productive, those resources have not been deployed. That's basically what it is.
You're still here on News File. This is our very first segment in the special with Alan John Kojo Kyerematen, presidential candidate and a former Minister for Trade and Industry. And his movement for change organized a national economic summit yesterday, and they're seeking to rally bipartisan support for ideas into a national development plan of sort, feeding into his great transformation agenda or plan for the country if he's lucky enough to become president. I've got a lot of messages from you, but we've got just a couple of minutes to wrap up. This one, Nana says that I've had the opportunity to work with Mr. Kyerematen, and I am always amazed by how detailed he is. We introduced an initiative that had infrastructure involved, and this man will demand an action plan that must contain every single activity step needed for a successful launch of the initiative. And he will sit down with us himself to interrogate the action plan and demand answers for inaction. I remember he wanting to know whether we mowed the grass with a mower or cutlass. That is how detailed he can be with what he seeks. This one from Suleimana, it says, Alan's basis of resignation from his ministerial appointment and from the NPP make it utterly impossible to trust that his new drive is based on true passion. His new sermon of deduopolizing Ghana's politics was never heard until he decided to leave the NPP after he felt hard done by. If he had won the primaries in NPP, will this sermon ever be heard? Plausibly, no. As a watcher, I cannot take that as anything different from what exists now. So there are many who have messages, positive, and as you would say, negative, but they are criticisms. This one from Iraba, she says, will Mr. Alan Kyerematen have led NPP if he was chosen as their flag bearer? Why is it that he knew NPP has messed up but still decided to contest? This is a dent on him, and it's making it difficult for people to support him. I saw that Ghana needs an independent candidate and not a political party. I have been writing about it for some time now. Political parties are a chain of thieves, and we can't take them out. I agree with him on the plan. This I have been advocating for. It is the main reason we are wasting a lot of monies. Will he complete all cost-efficient, uncompleted projects in the country before starting new ones? Let's know his take about that as well. So, briefly, positive commentary, and there are so many I will share once we are done with this in the next few minutes. Okay. But you take the criticism in good faith, don't you?
Oh, very much so. I mean, look, I mean, that is me. That's my style. I have no difficulty if people disagree with me. But because I take things seriously, you have to be able to convince me that you yourself, you understand what you are talking about. That's how people have been misled, in this country. So I don't have any problem if people feel differently.
Great. So I had asked earlier that, is it really about lack of plans or corruption that is frustrating the plans? And I use the affordable housing project as an example. Is it really about lack of plans or corruption that is the major problem frustrating the plan, because it does appear as if the political leaders go in and the first thing is build a war chest, steal as much as you can. And today we see the brazen corruption. We see them. You must be such a novice not to see it. People who had no business to their name today can afford what you can't imagine. And you don't know where the money is coming from. It definitely is coming from corruption. And they are within the government. So corruption is the biggest bane, isn't it?
You are preaching to the converted. But let me qualify my understanding of what you are saying. The bread and butter policy issues with the economy are important. The governance-related issues are also important. They are two sides of the same coin. So they have to be dealt with on two parallel tracks, operating with the same level of intensity at the same time. So if you look at my GTP, it's not just, I have 6 clusters. There's the economic cluster, which is the subject of this summit, but there's also the governance cluster, where we deal with corruption, where we deal with constitutional reforms that will improve the quality of our governance, where we deal with our behavioral and attitudinal changes as a people. So the governance issues, including very much what you are talking about, corruption, has an impact on the economy and on the economic cluster. So, as I said, if we could just abate corruption by 10%, only by 10%, it would increase our economic performance by double of that, about 20%. So it's a question.
We have a 5,000 housing project, 5,000 unit housing, affordable housing project. And we sink in excess of $100 million, only completing 1,000 plus of that. And we still need about 35,000 to complete that. That is how corruption is staring us in the face. Now, you have promised that you will sign what you call a citizen's contract.
Yes.
A citizen's contract to wage a relentless war against corruption. Yes. Ghana has made 0 improvement in the corruption fight in the last 4 years. What can you do differently? Is it just about signing a contract with us?
First, and I want to repeat this, I don't think we have enough time to interrogate the corruption challenges in our country across various companies. But if you ask what my own perspective is, number one is about leadership. Leadership by example. But when we talk about leadership by example, it's not just about leadership as a president. It's about the president and the people around you. That is the leadership by example, collective leadership by example. That's how I will put it. Number 2 is about the transparency of our legal and regulatory regime. You see, if you have a public procurement law, that in itself can create an incentive for corruption. Then it means you have to fix that. You have to fix the law. That if you have regulation and laws that would create an incentive because there are openings for people then to be corrupt, then you have to fix the law. So it's also about regulatory and legislation, but it's also about institutional response. The institutions that have been established to fight corruption. What is the level of resource allocation to them? Who are appointed into those
This government passed a very important corruption instrument, the Right to Information, law. Set up a special prosecutor, because attorney generals cannot prosecute their own. That's a fact. So set up a special prosecutor, and has done a number of things. Improved the punishment for certain corrupt acts to, felony properly, so to speak. And yet, the government is swimming in the corruption in a manner that has not been seen before. This government won elections partly on the back of the corruption campaign against John Mahama. John Mahama did the corruption perception index 48%, his best. He moved to 47%, and then 43, he couldn't do better beyond that. And this government took over, and then 43. It just can't seem to be able to move. My question finally to you is, you have said that you are in this to create prosperity for Ghanaians.
Yes. Economic prosperity.
Right. Are Ghanaians accepting your message so far, knowing the very odds that independent presidential candidates have yet to make even 1% in our elections?
They are. But just before I get to that, unfortunately, I'm not here to audit the corruption record of either NPP or NDC. That's why I'm unable to provide answers.
You're seeking office. So
yes. Yeah, but,
and this is current, so we should ask you about
it. But Samson, let's be real. You cannot, this is not a platform. You know how much time you need. It's not that I cannot do that. But let's say this is not a platform to do that. But I'm telling you that I'm giving you a sense of the kind of direction I would want to provide. You understand?
You want to focus on the economy.
Yeah, but you see, but the point is that you can check my record. I've been in this game for quite some time. Check my record. That should provide you a sense of whether there is anything directly, indirectly, remotely that has been associated with me in terms of corruption over that period. And then also, not just in government, let people go back, and know the person before they start talking about.
I don't recall any of the corruption scandals anywhere close to you.
No, absolutely, yes. So I was just saying that your final question
about whether people are actually buying into the fact that you represent what they need to bring prosperity to them, and you also knowing that this is almost an impossible task.
It is a possible task. You see, something, I'll tell you something. People will be shocked in this country. I will tell you. Because, see, by the nature of Ghanaians, it is very difficult for them to tell you what actually they are thinking. I know the famous Shakespeare, there's no art to find the mind's construction in the face. It is more relevant in Ghana than anywhere else. So people are not talking. But I can tell you, let us wait and see what will happen. Because, you see, the point is that, number one, people want to move beyond the NPP and the NDC.
That's correct.
So, I mean, Alan is a clear, valid, and credible alternative.
So the third force Ghanaians are crying for is
when you don't have an alternative that you are somehow handcuffed, and handicapped. That's not the issue. And at any rate, because you want to know whether people are convinced about it. Yes, they are.
We have seen these massive crowds that you have gathered at your town hall meetings. And I was surprised to hear that at one of such meetings, that the crowds we saw were not members, but they were rather officers, just officers. Such a huge crowd.
So where
are you
are
certain that will translate
but
into
where are they all day coming from? Let me tell you one thing. You see, because you have to also do analysis of crowds to know whether it's a real crowd or not. So you have somebody who exists from a dominant party, let's say NPP. Now, the stronghold of that party is maybe Ashanti region. If you have somebody who exists from a party and is able to make such an impression in their stronghold within such a short time, then it should tell you something. Where is the crowd coming from? And I can tell you, the crowd you saw in Kumasi, 70% of the people who were waiting around in Ashanti region could not even get transportation to come.
Oh.
I'm telling you, 70%.
All right, Honorable Alan John.
But my last point is that it is because you need executive authority to make things happen. That's why I'm in this game.
We wish you the very best, sir.
Thank you, Samson.
Have a good day.
Okay, take care.
All right, so that's it. We are special with Alan John Kyerematen, presidential candidate and former minister for trade and industry, whose movement for change led the National Economic Summit yesterday, where they are seeking to rally bipartisan expertise for a transformation of the Ghanaian economy.